Somebody's enjoying you.
Yes, please.
I'll make a grand appearance. Of those us.
Oh, yeah. Yes, yes. They, hey, Brandon,
Hey, what's up?
I'm gonna make you co-host.
Okay.
Where's your picture? Where's your thing socket? Oh, where are you? Oh, here we go. I'm going to make you co-host.
Okay.
And, oh, yes, we need the mic.
Do we?
You get a little handheld.
Share one or?
No, we got one.
Oh, that would help a lot. Having mics.
Press the turn on.
Testing.
Yeah.
Dips on the yellow.
Shannon, can you grab one? We can have four.
I'm imagining our outfit. Yeah, but it's too. Focus and cure it in here. I'm done.
Thank you.
Oh my God. I did.
Los muy aislado y no sé.
It's been a really long day.
Okay.
Is yours working?
Can you all hear us out there?
Yeah.
It's been a really long day. She's breaking me out into song now.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
It's the eight. So.
If you can hear me from.
You want it?
Hey, Fred, you made it. I didn't know you were, I saw you racing. And I said, you come on with me. Okay, great. Huh? See, there you go. You're in the neighborhood. Shannon, turn it on. Is it, my person working? Okay, did you mute yourself?
Says off, that means they can't hear me.
Is it on? It's working. Oh, everything. Okay, we're ready. Hey, welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. How's your final week going so far? It's been a long week already today, and we have a few more people straggling in. So I'd like to welcome everybody to this amazing panel. Indigenous-led rights of nature, dismantling fossil fuels and colonial. And who better to lead this discussion than the three panelists we have here today. My name is Shannon Biggs, and I'm the co-founder of Movement Rights. And I'm going to be handing this over really quickly to our three panelists. I'd like to introduce them. Dr. Crystal Cavalier-Kent at the end here, who is the director of Seven Directions of Service. She's a member of the OCD Band Association. What did I say? I'm just kidding. It's too late for this sort of business. Way too late for this sort of foolery. Crystal has been also a leader in the grassroots-led fight to stop the Mount Valley Pipeline, South Cape expansion. And we also are joined here by Julie Barnick, who's from the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma. She also serves as the Movement Rights Plains Coordinator, and also as the Global Lines for the Rights of Nature North American Organizer. And we have Casey Camp Nordic.
Forgot.
I always want to call you like doctor or
Go
something.
ahead.
Dr. Casey Camp Nordic. She's an MIA, matriarch and No, I meant you're the whole matriarch, yes. She is the matriarch for movement rights, and for, a lot of indigenous, led organizing here in Turtle Island. Casey Camp Horning is, from the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma. She is an elder. She is also led her tribe to become the first to recognize rights of nature in North America. And partially in response to fossil fuels, where she and Julie live, which they'll talk a little bit about. She is also the co-founder of Movement Rights and our board chair. I'm so proud to say that. And also the chair of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature Indigenous Council. So without further ado, with this amazing panel, we are here to talk about, first and foremost, why Indigenous leadership for rights of nature is so critical in this time. So I'll just ask each of you to address that. Crystal, would you like to go first?
Sure, we'll go first. We could have mentioned Kyohei, the home we say, me, Crystal. We were open to Kisahoni, we were in North Carolina, Washington. So, thanks, for being on this panel. This is kind of exciting to do our first thing week. I'm excited to be doing it because, so why I think it should be Indigenous led. It is because this is how it's always been before colonialism came here into this continent. We always took care of the land and had responsibilities, and it's part of our original teachings. And it really should go back to that way. And there's a lot of work that has to be undone to get it back that way. And yeah, that's what I think about it. Thank you. I thought she was gonna talk longer. I was mulling over what my answer to that would be, is why it's Indigenous-led. As an Indigenous woman that has grown up in a matriarchal family in Oklahoma, I personally just can't see any other way. It is the responsibility and the relationship that we as Indigenous women and Indigenous peoples have had with the sources of life for time immemorial. Our creation stories come from the place, where we came from, within, above, below, through the water, through the mud, from the stars, all of these things, that we were born with a relationship already in place there. Why it should be an Indigenous-led movement is because we have been doing this job for time immemorial. We will continue to do it after all of the things that are happening now are done. Colonialism is a concept that is not very old, honestly. We still have, I don't want to call them stories because there are truths, but we have our things that have come through word of mouth, generation after generation after generation, about our relationship with the land, the rocks, the water, the fire, all of these things that predated this colonial concept that's come in and will still continue to be here as we teach our next 7 generations the responsibility and the relationship that they have.
Yeah, I raised that. I know how you we have nothing proud of all these others out here. There's a concept that I was hearing through both of these young women's openings, and they were saying before colonialism. I want all of you right now to think of BC. The obvious one is the BC that's fed to us by the colonists about where religion comes from. That BC. What about before capitalism? I personally, as an actress, thought about before Costner. With dances with wolves and us romanticized version of us that happened. What else did we come up with before carbon trading?
Before Columbus?
Yeah.
What's that?
Before Columbus.
Before Columbus. Yeah, there's so many things that were BC about where we are on Turtle Island and where we are with our thinking. And my mistake, I first want to say thank you to all of you who are coming here with your true spirits and your true ways of wanting this world to become healthy for yourself and for her, our Mother Earth and Father Sky, our relations within the water herself. All of the things that those BC folks didn't know was alive. And they look at things as inanimate objects to be bought and sold and plundered and not appreciated. They forget that those very life-giving things that they eat, drink, and breathe that give these bodies life have to be alive or that wouldn't be happening. So we have to always be aware that within the Indigenous perspectives, the ones that are still very woke, we understand that concept in virtually every way that we deal with this thing called climate change, that we deal with this thing called colonialism, that we deal with this stuff that is put out by these big gas and oil companies that are determined that their extractive industry that brings that false sense of money and wealth is actually something that is vital and part of the Mother Earth's life cycle. My good friend Penny Overplant one time led a prayer at Richmond. Where was that? Richmond Chevron refinery for the oil and gas. I had never thought of that. That the oil and gas deserve our prayers to stay within Mother Earth where they belong, where the Creator placed them. That we really have to redefine and understand what this original instructions are and remember exactly why we're brought together at times like this. It's a ceremony when we come together like this, when we start enriching each other's thoughts. And because of that way of being, these are Indigenous-led movements, and they have a reason to succeed. There's a reason we still exist, and that is that sacred way of relationship with all that is.
Thank you. As a non-Indigenous to this place person, I think it's important to say why Indigenous leadership is important for people who are from settler populations here on this land, which is that Indigenous leadership is taking us forward with the connection to the past of who we really are, that connection with the earth that has been forgotten as a result of the colonization, as a result of being settlers and being lost. And so that leadership brings us home. And that's a really important piece of the story. It's not about Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people. It's about how do we come together and how do we really accept that leadership that Indigenous people are offering to us at this time, despite all of the colonization, and despite all of the things and the atrocities that have been perpetrated on our people. And here we are trying to come up with solutions, and the solutions aren't always sitting right in front of us, sitting right next to us, which is that the way forward is also that connection to our past.
And so as a non-Indigenous person, it's always my honor and my privilege to stand beside and work alongside and listen to and learn from every single day from women like that are sitting right next to me. And also around this room, around many of the rooms that we've been in this week on Climate Week. And so that is the power of Indigenous leadership. So when it comes to rights of nature, and the conversation of what is rights of nature, how many of you know what rights of nature is? If you're really sure you know, you got it. That's pretty good. 10 years ago, when I asked that question, I would be like the only person raising their hand, right? So it's come a long way, and the reason it's come a long way, so rights of nature. Some people think it's a legal framework, kind of. Yes, we are changing the law because the law currently is a colonial law that says that nature is property, and we gotta destroy that. We have to replace it with natural law. The law that will live and outlive any colonial law that you can think of. Natural law will surpass that and carry this planet through, no matter what. So the question that we have is, do we get to be part of that story and rewrite on that story? And the rights of nature movement is now law in the last 15 years, so in over 40 countries across the world and more every single day. And the reason it's so fast growing is because it's Indigenous-led. Because it isn't just a legal change, it's a system change, it's a cultural shift. And all of that comes back to the people sitting right next to me. So now I want to look at how, and ask you all how rights of nature and how Indigenous-led rights of nature is particularly appropriate as a response, or why you chose rights of nature as part of the work that you do in dismantling fossil fuels. Crystal?
So in 2021, when Jason and I went on this Great Road to DC journey, I organized a total boat journey with Native Organizers Alliance, and we went from the Lummi Nation with a 5,000-pound totem pole to different sacred sites. And we went from Bellingham, Washington, from the Lummi people to the Nimiku in Idaho. Then we went down to Bears Ears with the Janae Bakaya. Yeah, the Bakaya Janae. Then we went up to Bears Ears, Chopper Canyon, and then we went up to Rapid City, over to Standing Rock, and then down to Yonkawan. And right there in Yonkawan, I just really felt a connection with the river, with the Missouri River. And it was there, that I first heard about the rights of nature with the Menominee Nation. So Guy Ryder was talking about that. And I had heard it before, but this time it really stuck with me. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then we heard about the people that had got moved from that, from the river because of the Army Corps of Engineers wanted to put a dam there. And then it just kind of stuck with me, and I said, I need to bring this back to our people, because you see, we have been colonized since the 1600s, right? Like, we had contacts, late 1500s, early 1600s, and, you know, just moving back and forth, going up and down the river. And then finally around the 1700s, I think we settled in Orange County. And, you know, we really cultivated and we really forgot our connections to place and the river and who we were. And so I said, we've got to fight this pipeline, and we've got to, you know, recognize this river as our relative, because this pipeline is going to destroy it. And so during that whole time, I have been watching movement rights, and watching you guys have these webinars about the rights of nature, and I was like, I gotta meet these people, and I don't even know how I met you guys. But I was just like, I gotta meet these people, these are just, wow, this is amazing. I need to be doing this work and be in these spaces. And, we met and, I was just like, this is great. We're gonna bring the rights of nature, and we started talking about it. And it had been already talked about in North Carolina before, but it never went anywhere. And I just was like, no, it's gonna go somewhere. And we started slowly to educate people. And it was during COVID, so we had to do it online. So we had about 3 online education sessions. And then we talked to a representative and we asked if she would write a bill to introduce it to the Senate, to the House of Representatives. And she didn't quite understand it because in the state of North Carolina, in their constitution, they have something like parks are here for people to use. And she was like, well, that's the same. And I'm like, no, that's not really the same. That's saying you're using it like you're commodifying it. We're trying to treat it as a relative, right? Because it is our responsibility to make sure this river has rights and nothing can harm it, because when you separate yourself from nature, you're really killing yourself, because you're bringing all these pollutants into the air and you're killing the environment, but you don't realize you're killing yourself. And so people have got to understand that. And, I just don't understand for the life of me why you don't realize if you poison the air, poison the water, what are you gonna do? And so we started to push for that. And we introduced in 2023 the rights of the Haw River because of the pipeline was coming through. And then in 2024, we introduced a similar bill for the rights of the Dan River because it was being attacked by another pipeline. And this year, we introduced rights of the rivers and combined both bills, the Haw and the Dan. And we, educated people about it, and we started to build a movement. But now we've actually captured a couple of senators in the state that said they will write a companion bill. So we can introduce it in 2027, both the House and Senate. So we are planning on a lobby day because we're going to get it pushed through. And right now we're going from the coast to the mountains, doing these town halls. To where we can help people. And what really helps is when these disasters hit, people are asking for help. And I'm just like, well, common sense would say that a city should not zone you in a floodplain, even though the flood hasn't happened in 100 years. But now we see these hurricanes that have been, I don't know, manipulated to bring these downpours. And I want to tell you something. In North Carolina, I want to say it's called spruce pine, is this rare mineral that goes in your phone or your computer. It's like the purest quartz in the world, and it can only be found in North Carolina. And if that place was to be destroyed all around it, to where people who are, generational farmers and that's all they have, or, they can't move anywhere, and they're being bought out by these corporations because, what can you do? It costs so much money to rebuild. So you have no choice but to sell it because your home is destroyed. They're gonna take the land. And so we're gonna have to stand up and we're gonna have to educate the community that that's what this government is coming to do. And it's, look over here, what my hand is doing, where they're doing stuff in the dark. And we're all being distracted by it. So we have to educate people to come together on this. So that's why we're doing these rights of nature, and we built toolkits, and we built, just ways for people to come together. We have a community, you call it thing. What's that thing called that I sent it to you? It's like a forum. It's not forum. It's like I can't remember the word just came in. It's a private page hosted only, our seven directions members and get to it to talk about rights of nature, where it's private, because we don't believe Facebook is safe anymore to talk about this stuff. And so we've created a safe space for people in seven directions in North Carolina to come together to try to strategize these ideas. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
Anytime like my daughter does, but it's just, I just can't quite do it. Rights of nature, why rights of nature were, full transparency, this is my mom. I'm her eldest daughter. And this was work that she had taken up, a decade ago, but it was really work that she's been doing her entire life, and when we were born, we began to do the work. It was rights-based work always, from civil rights, human rights to, the rights of migrant farm workers, to the rights to wear your hair long to school as an Indigenous man in Oklahoma. Those were all parts of our entire upbringing. This just seemed like a natural extension of that. One of the things that I've learned, because I learned something every time I go somewhere and visit someone else. And I have had the,
Here's this one. They're distracted.
I'm sorry. I've learned something every time I've gone somewhere. This second time I've been to Climate Week, one of the things I've learned is it is extremely chaotic and you don't know where all the things are happening all the time. You don't know who's doing what, where, and all that kind of stuff, so. But with rights work, and rights of nature work, the inherent rights that we have understood, just as being Indigenous people we don't even have a word for nature in our language. It's just, that's our relatives, our relatives that have 2 legs and 4 legs and that are rocks and there's water and there's part of our ceremony and part of our life and part of our relationship, and we're related to the food. And so we're all part of this already. And this just kind of it was a vehicle, a tool to be able to do that. One of the things I've learned is actually from my mom was something that she was saying was about, we talk about rights, the rights of this and the rights of that. And I understand why we have to be very particular with the language that we use, that we have to use rights as a legal vehicle that we're working on here. But what I also understand is that which she has taught me, something that I remember her saying is that rights just are. You can't grant them. They are, everything already has that right. You can either acknowledge it or you can deny it. That's it. You don't grant anything or anyone or any being rights. Rights of nature acknowledges, it uplifts, it upholds, it puts it into the colonial concepts of court and law. The language that is being spoken, this out here, not the language we feel and hear or what we know in our teachings, but the actual language that can get into these legal systems that we keep having to go through over and over again, from the time of contact with the treaties and all the rights they granted us in those treaties, and fighting for those rights and continuing to fight for those rights on and on and on. So when people say things like, well, what are you doing in the face of everything that, politically happening in this country, and not just in this country right now, it's around the world where we've seen this resurgence of what they call the right, conservative things that are happening there. What are you going to do? What we're going to continue to be. We're going to continue to exist in the way that we always have. We're going to continue to do the work. We're going to continue to speak up on behalf of the things that can't speak for themselves. And rights of nature is allowing us to be able to do that on a really grand and global level. That it has a name and it has a movement that's behind it. And movement is action, right? So when you're part of a movement, then you're doing something, you're moving forward, and you actually have the action that goes along with the work that you do.
Rights of nature. I guess when one has to look at history, for us in particular, coming from that area where the Nhontuan were, that was Ponca territory. We lived along Nishu, where the Missouri River, Nishu, it means, the water that has smoke on it, that those were, in our understanding, spirits that were on top of the water, walking into the midst, that were giving us the type of instructions that we were supposed to follow. During that period of time when my grandfather was sick, then we were forcibly removed to Oklahoma, where there were, 2 indigenous tribes that were there. Now there are 39 tribes in Oklahoma. All of us have forced removals, including the Carolinas, including New York. Seneca, Cayuga are there as well, including all around Turtle Island. And a series of events happen because one has to understand their own history in order to know where to go and to understand that each and every indigenous nation that has survived colonialism has always adapted to the situation that they're in. So I'm gonna move through a bunch of history where there were so many things that were created to continue to destroy us. That relocation, that forced relocation, the move from the food that we grew and eat and had it to commodities. Oh yeah, that's another BC before commodities. Yeah. Where we were introduced to white flour, white sugar, and dairy, and all manner of things that continue to kill us. Any number of things. The Dawes Act that created a situation where we lived all on one chunk of land, no matter where we were, and they cut it into pieces and say, this is your square. And then when you get that square, they say, you are starving, right? Well, here's some food. All you have to do is look at this piece of paper and agree to it. We didn't know what it meant to buy ourselves land, so that dispossessed us even more. Boarding schools, kidnapping to schools, continuing to take the language, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Survival was the way, adaptation was the way. We get to a point where we're dying from environmental genocide in my generation. And the federal government through the Department of Energy is offering what they call economic growth to bringing nuclear waste, those big types of incinerators that bring municipal waste to your land and burn that. We have ConocoPhillips 66 that's poisoning the air, the water, and the earth. Okay, that's not adaptable. That is only changeable. So my brothers, my mamas, my cousins, my grandmas and grandpas, my kids, all of us began to have our kitchen table gatherings about what do we do next? How do we keep our starving people from accepting $1 million that would feed people, but it would kill the generations to come by accepting nuclear waste? Well, we do this. And so we did that. How do we stop continental carbon black from killing all the Ponca underneath it through that house and that it put us there? And that's a whole nother story. Well, we just do it and we did it. And we won lawsuits and we got them moved. They still operated. They're still killing us. We have more cancer rates. We have children being born with asthmas, we have children making it to birth. We have this incredible rate of imprisonment. We have the highest imprisonment of Native women of any place on Turtle Island. And again, the statistics are staggering. So what does one do in this particular situation? One adapts to what is the best move forward now. Well, I happened to be in gathering in 2011 up north of here, where 100 women from around the world gathered with Women's Earth and Climate Action, wondering why the Creator led me here, why Mother Earth led me here, because I'm just me. I'm mama, I'm grandma, I'm sister, I'm auntie, I'm daughter, I'm granddaughter, and I'm just me, right? And then, you know, the understanding that women are the keepers of the village knowledge. You know what's going on in your immediate family, you know what you need. Right? You know what your neighborhood needs. You know what your village needs. And so I knew why I was there. I was to listen to the village knowledge of all of these global women who were experiencing the same kind of thing, but different in their portion of the earth. The species were dying. Humans are on the brink of extinction. Climate change is real. We call it purification. In our ceremonies, that's what we were told it was, and the earth is purifying herself. And I heard about this thing called rights of nature. And I thought, oops, and time for me to go there and not listen, because I thought another law, really another law. No, her uncle Carter, the leader of the American Indian movement, my brother, had told us when the Freedom of Religion Act came out, that was for Native Americans to finally have freedom of religion. He said, "Listen, if we need a law to tell us that we're free to practice our religion, then we're not free. It's a law, you know?" And that's how I felt about that until we had time to explore. Shannon talked to me about what rights of nature meant in her terms and her understanding. I wasn't hearing that. As an Indigenous woman, I knew that natural law existed already. It existed. Natural law exists. The wind's gonna blow, the water's gonna flow, the volcano's gonna go off, the thunders are gonna come, the earth's gonna shake. Those are natural law. And so what does this thing called rights of nature mean? Because nature has rights. Those are inherent rights. And then we went to first, I believe, Ecuador, that had that in their constitution. We went to New Zealand to visit the Maori that have the Wanganui River recognized, not given rights, but recognized as having rights. Various other places, lots of education. Went back to our community to movement rights, had intertribal rights of nature forums, as well as the first ones, I can't remember what we called them, but anyway, gathering the community together and saying, what does this mean to you? By that time, I'm on the council. And I understood that those immutable rights of nature that the Ponca always recognized could be put into a form, because that's what this government likes, on a piece of paper, typed out, clearly stated would already exist, and that we recognize that as a form of our law, our statute. And that's how we came about with that in 2017. Lots of other details. And then in 2023, the Ponca passed the immutable Ponca rights of the rivers as well, to recognize rivers. This in turn becomes a protection for my great grandchildren someday, some way. This law is already in place now. It's in the books. Youngest daughter's working to put it into my other daughter, into the codes of the Ponca tribe. We have it in our court system right there. And so it gets to the point for all of us that we say, we're doing this, you challenge me. Rights of nature.
Thank you. So talked about all of the work. I mean, this work for me is really just going around from Indigenous community to Indigenous community, learning from those experiences. And then going into other circles and sharing that experience. Because that's how we weave the movement together. And that's where we, like, oh, that works. I wonder what that could look like over here. I mean, that's how our movements work. So all around the world, we have Indigenous people moving this work forward at different places, different, each country is also different. The situation is different. So in Ecuador, where 53% of the population is Indigenous, when they had the Constitutional Convention, they had shamans that were praying inside the Constitutional Convention when they were talking about reforming their constitution, which some countries do from time to time. Not ours, but and the idea that this is actually so much a part of the culture, it's breathing in to even the most formal spaces of politics is so incredible to me. That there's this spiritual essence that is important in those kinds of discussions. And so you get people saying like, well, yeah, with 53% of the population as Indigenous, it's permeated through the culture to the point where when you have a conversation about, well, what about putting rights of nature into the Constitution, into constitutional law? The Ecuadorians are like, yeah, that makes total sense. We're not quite there yet here in this country. So every place we go, we're also looking at all kinds of different circumstances, but around the world, we have people in Ecuador, forests, where our colleague Ashley was just, and several others were just in this forest that was protected from this mining corporation. She said, you can't even hear each other because the bugs are so loud, which is so cool. And also, it's a lot of bugs. And she's like, there's glow in the dark spiders. And I'm like, wow. Neat. But this is a forest that was going to succumb to mining from a number of mining corporations. And recognizing there's the rights of nature are law in Ecuador. So on behalf of this forest, would the integrity of this forest still exist if we allowed mining to come in? And the answer was no. Because the rights of nature isn't just about a tree or, even a river, it's about the community that includes the human community. And the integrity of that ecosystem is what is the basis of rights of nature from that perspective. And mining activities have stopped in that forest, period. And in other places, fossil fuel projects have stopped. And in other places, you have, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, guardians of the river. And they say, the Wanganui people say, from the mountains to the sea, I am the river and the river is me. Like they breathe that in. That's the kind of changes that we're talking about. This isn't just a legal shift. This is so much more, but it's also important to confront the colonial system of laws that says nature is property, women were property, slaves are property, because they never were. So this is about, not only in this country, it's also about holding up a mirror. And the people who are leading this way to the culture shift, not just the legal shift, what can I do to protect something in my communities or trick of the law? But how do we actually get to the culture shift? And that's what Indigenous people around the world are showing us. And whether or not it's rights of nature for you or other Indigenous, whether you look at it as your Indigenous rights or Indigenous just transition or any of the things that are happening in this room, we are all together. As long as we're also looking at that Indigenous leadership. I want to turn it over to us. Do you have any questions that you would like to, or things that you would like to say? Should we open it up to a question? Oh,
One thing, yes, that makes me, and whenever she was talking there, or when Janet had them all talking and stuff, and, like I said, all of the years that mom has been actually out there doing the work, we just kind of were doing what she needed us to do. Right, so you're helping organize community meetings, okay, we're gonna come to cook. There's ways we should go and you support these spaces, but I think one of the really important aspects of the work and the rights of nature work is it is not a one size fits all, and nobody's gonna come in and tell you what you need to do in your community. You know what you need to do in your community. You know what's important in your community. You know what it is that you have a relationship with. You know what it is that needs protecting more than anything else. And that's also a way to bridge the divide between Indigenous and non-Indigenous or right and left or, whatever color schemes you want to look at or anything is there's something everywhere that is important to everyone. And it might be important for different reasons. Some people might look at it because they can go fish there. So they want to protect the water and the fish because they love to fish. And somebody else may be communing with that water and having a ceremony with that water, and that water is life, that's part of their thing. And somebody else looks at it as a source of clean water for the crops and the foods that they're growing. So there's something that is a common thread within a community. We don't go into spaces that we're not invited into. No one's we're not just gonna march in and say rights of nature is the only way, and it's the way we need to do this, and it's gonna fix everything. No, that's not the way that the movement itself works. If we're invited into a space to come and talk to you and find out, how can we help you organize in your community to decide what it is that is that cohesiveness, that the factor in your community that brings you all together that you want, but a lot of times it's our kids, right? We're all looking at what we're leaving behind, and people call it legacies or inheritance or whatever it is that they want to look at, but we don't want to leave a space where our children literally cannot live. So looking into spaces like that, coming in and finding a commonality instead of the things that divide us all is also a large part of the work around rights of nature.
Truly, just to take that one step further, the convenings of the four winds, and the work that you do, that you lead as a Plains coordinator. Can you say, how is that, how does that factor into movement building and to strengthening, the possibilities in the Plains?
Yeah, that was something that I also got stepped into after it was already born. The convenience of the four winds were a vision of women that had come before me, and now I'm lucky enough, blessed enough, whatever you want to say, to be able to come in and do the work alongside them and with the guidance and the support of those women who had done the original meetings, where I was just support staff and, kind of behind the scenes doing things, which is where I really prefer to be, because I feel like I'm most productive and doing most when I'm back there, doing the cooking or the cleaning or the watching or whatever it needs to be done. But organizing the convenings of the four winds is like one of the things I'm looking at right now is the difference in between alliances and coalitions, right? A coalition doesn't last as long as an alliance does. So I'm looking for allies and building these alliances. The people that come to the convenings of the four winds have been coming from all directions and all different tribal nations who we have really different particular ways about us, but there are things that we have that are commonalities that we work towards that have allowed us to come together to build these alliances. And education. I've learned so much since I started working with movement rights in an actual work capacity. About things that I had absolutely no idea were going on out in the world. And a lot of that has to do with false solutions. That they're not actually solutions, they're carbon scams and schemes that are going on out there. I did not know that there were people, corporations out there who were saying that whale, not all the whales, but that whale right there, in that water is worth this many carbon credits. So I can, they're buying and trading carbon credits and no one's understanding the full circle of what's going on of, planting trees here, but what it's doing over here. They don't connect any of those dots for you and, the capitalism that is and the commodification and the financialization of nature is just such an important thing for people to be aware of and to learn. And convening of the Four Winds or the FOG conference, Frontline Oil and Gas Conference, or the Iron Forums that we hold our spaces where you can come together and you can provide that education, that support system for people to take back into their communities and do what Crystal's done in hers. Where she's developing these safe spaces and these online programs and written materials and things like that to where, the base is getting broader and broader and broader as each person comes and then takes it back to where they were at. So in this case, Crystal had the first Indigenous-led rights of nature tribunal in this part of Turtle Island, or actually in all of Turtle Island here, in her community there. And that was, part of a continuation of the work that we all, had started together in these small spaces like the beach.
I want to add to that, please. I think the other portion of that you mentioned a little bit earlier is being informed from the place you are. When you were talking about, a little bit earlier about that, and that's something that each one of us has to be thinking about right now. It's much as if you have a body that you live in. Nobody else lives in that body. They don't know what's going on in that body. Or they don't know what's going on in that family or that village or whatever. Many times, we're informed ceremonially. Many times it's intuition. Many times those commonalities that you're talking about are the thread. And there also can be that particular information, like what happens in the desert is going to inform someone differently than what happens in the army. What happens on the plains, what happens on the coast where the hurricanes are hitting, and what happens where the earthquakes are in the Bay Area. And so when she was talking about the fact that there's no one size fits all, that's why. The earth informs us where we are. The natural laws that show you that maybe the wind's breaking harder on this part of the seacoast than it used to. For us, it's bigger tornadoes. We're paying attention to the fracking fields that are causing man-made earthquakes and what that does. The carbon market that's putting these carbon pipelines through the area is going to affect that area in a different way than it does us where we are, where there's just pipelines underneath us. So when each of you are looking at rights of nature, then you not only have to listen to the earth and all of those things that are around you. I invite you to be paying attention to what the indigenous people in the territory are saying, what your intuition is saying, what your neighbors are saying, and what you're observing. And know a little bit about how you need to go forward with them.
So just to try to like wrap it up, because I think we only have a few minutes left. you know, organizing communities, legal action, public awareness, you know, working with our coalitions. We have one of our coalition members here, you know, to help mobilize and get thousands of public comments, because again, like I said earlier, in one of our, workshops, they put these colonial systems out there, but we're gonna have to learn these colonial systems and use it against them. So using the laws against them, is the only way we're gonna be able to stop this fossil fuel expansion that they are now pushing, that was just laid out in the United Nations from the presidential administration. And then grassroots tactics continue doing that. But I just wanna thank you all for being here and doing this, because, I look up to you, so when I grow up, I wanna be like Grandma Casey.
Me too. Just also want to recognize, so the movement rights. All four of us are actually movement rights, the board member here, Crystal, so that's cool. Very cool. But, I also want to recognize like 7 directions of service. And that's Crystal, but Jason, and everybody here who is part of 7 directions of service. Just a shout out for all of the work that you do. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So with that, close, let's wrap it up. Oh, there's all kinds of little movement rights and 7 directions of service swag. There's stickers, there's pieces of paper. Please take some.
We have cards and we're gonna be here to answer questions for a few minutes.
Yeah, maybe there might be just a question that someone is burning with real quick that they feel like it just has to have an answer. Anybody, anywhere? Yes.
Seth, he'll bring you the microphone.
Thank you. This was incredibly illuminating and helpful. How do you think about efforts to secure land rights for Indigenous people? And how that squares with not commoditizing nature and nature as a relative?
I just call it land back. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. This land has never belonged to anyone anyway, right? But if you want to have a title, I technically own the land that I live on. But it is for all my relatives. We grow community gardens there. We have an earthen lodge and, you know, that's where everybody, all the time, in any circumstance. So I think that if land back means something, it means to put it back into the hands that are gonna care for it again in a good way. And there's no, I don't see any problem with that personally.
We, on October the 22nd, if you go to our website, 7 directions of service, so we have a problem in North Carolina where we have a lot of conservation organizations that want to conserve the land. But what they're doing is some of them actually lease out the land to these extractive industries, right? And so we have to educate them. And so we have a workshop that talks about how conservation organizations are doing harm. But they need to understand that they are part of nature as well. And to give it back to land, you know, giving land back. But what does that mean to rematriate it? Which means we're making it sacred again. So we have these workshops for people to understand, because that is a huge problem in the Southeast. That people take this land and then they hold it, and then they'll say, oh, here's this an indigenous tribe, you can use it, or you can, you know, be the gatekeeper of it. But we really don't have control of that land because we truly don't own it. Because if something happens and you get mad, you just take it away from us. So we have these workshops to try to expand the minds of people, because, you know, it's not really giving it back to us when you just still hold on to it.
And I'd go a little bit further to say, I think commodification of nature is a financialization tool that they use. When we talk about that, it's not necessarily a stewardship type of situation. Like if I was to acquire land back, say somebody decided to give me 65 acres of plot of land, I would not try to open a theme park there.
Yeah.
Making any money off of it. I wouldn't be, leasing it out for a wind turbine to come on or opening it up for fracking or injection wells or anything like that. I would probably grow a community garden. I'd probably open it up for people who don't have another place to go if they wanted to come out and hunt rabbits or, try to teach their kids how to set snares or something like that. So I think there's a really big difference between the views of, I still wouldn't feel like I owned it. Even I have to pay taxes on this stupid little square block of land I have in Red Rock, Oklahoma. It's not a lot of taxes or anything, but I still don't just feel like I don't put something around it that I would be so angry if somebody walked across my little corner lot, or anything like that. I think there's a big difference in just feeling that what the feeling of ownership is very, very different between, if land back spaces where we have the return of our relative to us to treat like a relative versus modifying it in some way.
So tell me what you think.
It seems to me that owning the land is the only way you're gonna be able to treat it as a relative. So it's a way of making the system that we're under work for you, work for all of us, work for nature.
Reasonable, very reasonable.
Thank you.
Kelly?
Thank you all so much. My only regret is that I missed a little bit. I've been seeing some, on social media that there's billionaires that are buying big pieces of Amazon, of the Amazon with the intention of what you're describing. How do you feel about that? Or how's that like a land for you, no pun intended?
Well, of course, that's wrong. I mean, there's nothing else to say about it. It's a shame that it's happening. It's the wrong thing for that to be going on, and we'll do our best, to be part of the decision making of our relatives in that portion of the world. We travel down there, we have partnerships with many that work within the 9 rights of nature framework, but there's a certain innocence that one has to understand as well, that certainly our people were taken advantage of in the same way, without the concept of land buying and without the choice. We formed a coalition or partnership with some ranchers that now own the Ponca land up in Nebraska or Nebraska. And when Keystone Pipeline was coming through, we were trying to use our treaty rights to protect the land that was now owned by white ranchers. And they were saying things like, you guys just don't get it. They're trying to do this eminent domain thing where they just take our land. And I said, yeah, we don't get it. Yeah. Well, that was the kind of thing that happened to us, and we see it happening in the Amazon to our own relatives. It's not their choice. But as long as those big people are not called out as clearly as they can be, that we don't say every single extractive organization are mass murderers, they're thieves, they're liars. They take advantage of everybody and everything, and stand up to that. It'll continue.
And along those same lines too, I was thinking about, obviously it looks like a good thing on the outside, right? You got somebody who's buying this huge chunk of the Amazon and they're gonna keep it safe. For the indigenous people there, but why don't you just give it to the indigenous people that are there to keep safe, right? I mean, we have the wherewithal and have been doing this for millennia. That's the space that they come from. And also it leaves just too many opportunities for, that person's heir to decide that that's not the way they want to handle the land they own down in the Amazon, and I'm gonna change it up now, and I'm gonna open it up for mining or whatever. It's just give it, if you have the wherewithal to do that, land back.
Just a quick follow-up, so it's like, this might be more of a legal question, but like putting it in a public trust would be one way to do that, or? It's not.
It could be, there are many ways that we could do that, but again, the land belongs to those indigenous people that the creator put into that spot, period.
I'd also just like to say that, property ownership doesn't convey within the right to destroy the ecosystem that we all require, that sustains us. So no matter how you slice it, whether you wanna talk about land back, whether you wanna talk about, all the different, mechanisms to do it. Fact is, we have to protect the sanctity of the world that we depend on. And a piece of paper doesn't give you the right to destroy all that for your generation or for future generations. So this is one of the tools, and one of the ways of looking at that actually brings the cultural shift and the legal shift that's necessary, but it's not really.
Question regarding.
We can hear you.
Here is okay. So one of you mentioned working with the local legislature. And since my work is with legislatures around the world, I'm actually quite curious as to how did you manage that? Because in a sense, you're taking natural law and rights that have always existed as rights and trying to also use an institution which has been created through not natural law and now have to interface with it to get what the result you want.
Well, I want to say that, what I heard you say is we captured a couple of. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, just somebody gets.
Oh, is it on me? There we go. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So how do we, man, I don't know, we just did it. We just told the representative Price that we wanted this bill, and she was like, these are the indigenous native people here, and I'm gonna listen to them. And that's what she did. She listened to us, even though she was kind of, what you say, Jason, she was like, man, I don't know, but.
So we went to the big building and we were gonna go door to door to door.
Right.
And we got to maybe the fifth door and they said, you want pricey,
Yes.
cause she believes in the environment.
Yeah.
So we went to Pricey's door and said, this is this and this. And she was like, how am I gonna get these old school politicians? I get it, but how am I gonna get them? And then Crystal gave her some more context, and some more context. And we found out like a week later that she just pushed it in the legislature.
We went back and forth on the language because there, people who put it in the bill format kind of did like some of the words, so we had to compromise.
Right.
But we didn't leave out the most important pieces. We were like, this has to stay. It's just, sorry.
The indigenous context had to stay. So she wanted to kind of like sneak it and be like, and Krista was like, no, because if you don't say this, then even when they make it a law, they won't still treat it like a relative. They'll still treat it like something that they're in domain over and is put on this earth for them to exploit. Does that make sense?
And they should get it for.
They co-authored it.
We co-authored it together now. Because we haven't lobbied, but what we've been doing is studying the politicians. We've been looking and seeing what they sponsor. So one of these people really loves the Hot River, but they're not very environmental, right? They just wanted to get the Hot River Trail and they're patriarchal. You know, I go in there not talking to him directly and he's looking at my husband, so I have to go over and whisper to my husband to tell him what I want him to say. And he says it, and then the guy's like, okay. But I'm talking to him, but he does not look at me because, you know, it's just doesn't like women.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know, we just, like grandma Casey says, you just have to stand up and call people out. And, well, you know, I get a lot of arrows shot in my back, but it's okay, I'm still living.
So the Amazon has an Amazon regional parliament, which is a very interesting institution where the nation's parliaments were also
The mic.
sorry. So the Amazon Parliament might be one in your global work that you might want to look at, because right now they're working with the fossil fuel, the treaty against fossil fuels, together with that campaign.
Yeah.
But that model of having a regional parliament that is based off that cultural understanding of the indigenous population is like a really interesting concept. It's still an institution like a legislature where people have gotten elected to it, but it's based on a different understanding.
That's happened. The rights of the Amazon is an actual piece that is getting put in place right now and has a lot of support. So
Yeah, we just came from an event with the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, and on the leader of that had just come from a event with the non-proliferation, fossil-free non-proliferation treaty group there. So they have, events that are not events, they have work that is coordinating, and also events at COP.
Those are the two campaigns.
There's a,
Institution that they are using as a model is the
Yeah.
Amazon Parliament.
Yes.
If you are interested in what is going on anywhere around the world, with the rights of nature, there's a website called the Eco Jurisprudence Monitor. Eco Jurisprudence Monitor. And once upon a time, not that long ago, those of us who are part of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, we could count all of them. We knew every single law that was being passed, where it was happening. We could count it, and now we're just trying to catch up to the movement. It's going so fast. So the Eco Jurisprudence Monitor is doing a lot of that work of showing, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And there's examples of what it looks like. So there's all kinds of things that you can take and borrow and look at from other places for inspiration, to see how that might look in the place where you live. And if you live here, you can also contact any of us.
yeah,
And it's on a state, local, municipal, tribal, global scale on that site that she's talking about there. It's kind of one of those ones you can just kind of start clicking and keep on going for a while.
so be bold and do something.
Yep.
Be bold, warrior up, and do something. This is not just a listening session. This is a directive to you, or else you wouldn't be here. Your inner self is telling you, we have to change what's happening in the world. And I'm the one that's gonna do it.
So thank you.
So I have one thing to say. I agree with what you said. Okay, I really agree with that. That you have to man up. We're gonna have to man up with the WFO in front and do something. So I would appreciate it if everyone would join movement rights or. Also, I just want to say this. I had, a previous mayor of Hillsborough, North Carolina, come to me and ask me for Habitat of Humanity to give a land acknowledgement. And my thought was, and it was in our territory, but of course, we didn't own the land. We owned it, but they wanted me to acknowledge that we were there and say something nice about a new habitat community coming up. And I told her absolutely not, that I was not going to acknowledge the land that we used to have, that white people stole by making up contracts because we could not read and we did not feel the life that they led and stole our land. I was not going to acknowledge that because that's exactly what she was asking me to acknowledge. And give them a pat on the back and say, just me.
Thank you.
So. If you don't ask anybody for acknowledgements. I immediately wrote the Crystal back, who gave me the land, who gave me these 2 words, land back.
Thank you all for coming, thank you.
Thank you all.